Story 1. Not being aware of their emotional triggers leads to regularly causing themselves to feel angry or upset when it could have been avoided. Story 2. Some comments here seem to confuse emotional intelligence with intellectual intelligence. This question is only asking about emotional intelligence, and these are not the same. Story 3. They become angry if they believe that someone is saying no or trying to instruct them. Story 4. Unearned confidence, quick judgment, lack of curiosity, and a reluctance to question information provided by friends and acquaintances. Story 5. They equate feeling negative emotions with being attacked. They literally cannot distinguish between the two experiences. If they do something wrong and you express that it upset you, they become defensive and angry because they now feel bad. Your words trigger their negative emotions, making them perceive themselves as victims. You cannot be upset without them being upset with you in return. These are the kind of people who have never sincerely said, "Sorry, I made a mistake. I will take responsibility and try not to do that again." Story 6. Well, everyone is equating low emotional intelligence with asshole. So I'm not sure I want to comment, but I'll give it a go anyway. I consider myself to have low emotional intelligence. I was raised by a domineering parent and have always been focused on intellect. I don't manage emotions well, whether they are my own or others. I am a personality type known for being analytical, and I have attention deficit disorder. I am actively working on my challenges through therapy and by improving my communication skills and listening. From the inside, having low emotional intelligence looks like missing social cues all the time, being gullible because you take people at face value, having to consciously make the right facial expressions to show sorrow, compassion, seriousness, etc. Intentionally focusing on writing or saying things in an empathetic way instead of being direct and potentially hurting others. Saying the wrong thing in emotional situations. Not realizing you've hurt someone's feelings in a conversation until hours later. Questioning why you don't seem to feel the same grief, concern, or empathy that others do. Feeling overwhelmed whenever you experience strong emotions because you don't know how to handle them, so you just try to survive the moment and move on as usual. Story 7. Jumping from one relationship to another without spending an extended time single to work on oneself. Story 8. I am a very logical person. I do not get emotional. This usually means they are so uncomfortable with processing emotions that they have suppressed them to the point that they do not even realize they feel them anymore. Story 9. Automatically thinking something is unwise and never considering a different perspective or deeper point. Story 10. Becoming overly reactive to feelings of anger or upset can be concerning. For example, if someone frequently reacts strongly to minor issues, such as spilling a cup of water, misplacing their keys, or discovering someone has taken the last snack, it may indicate poor mental health or low emotional intelligence. Story 11. Anger issues. As strange as it sounds, boasting about intelligence is common among some individuals. Usually, emotionally intelligent people do not feel the need to announce their intelligence to others. Story 12. Superficial friendships never apologize and lack real interests or hobbies. People simply do things to keep up with others, resulting in an inflated sense of confidence. Story 13. Not being able to take feedback or criticism without overreacting, crying, or holding a grudge is a sign of deep insecurity. Story 14. Everything is about how it affects them. They cannot understand that you might be affected differently. Story 15. No empathy. No intellectual curiosity that extends beyond their worldview. They are very protective of their often incorrect opinions. Story 16. Quick to anger. They do not listen and simply wait for their turn to speak, focusing on their own experiences. They believe their pets understand English and become upset when they do not. Story 17. Never question why things are done a certain way. One of my favorites is the need to be right about everything, regardless of how much or how little they know about the subject. Story 18. Egocentrism combined with hypersensitivity means being overly sensitive to one's own emotions and feelings while being completely unaware of those of others. Story 19. An inability to consider what the other person needs emotionally can be concerning. For example, there are men who are unaware of what their partners are experiencing. When their partners are going through difficult times, they may require specific support. I have observed men whose wives have lost a loved one. They continue to go about their lives as if nothing has changed, often confused by the reactions of those around them. Story 20. Someone who expects a lot from others but gives so little of himself. Someone who, when apologizing, cannot just say sorry, but immediately finds an excuse to free himself from responsibilities. Story 21. Never admitting they are wrong. Even the brightest people get things wrong sometimes. Being wrong about something is human, not compromising over small things. Living in society means compromising sometimes in the name of getting along. Not everything needs to be our way all the time. Being unnecessarily rude. Some people at my work could definitely learn that you get things done better and faster if you are kind to others. Story 22. Every person I've met who self-describes as an empath has been poor at reading a room. By this, I mean the individuals who suggest they possess extraordinary empathy, not basic human emotional connection. Story 23. People often roast those they claim to love and care about, justifying it as their sense of humor. They suggest that others need to toughen up or are too sensitive. This behavior reflects their own insecurities and low self-worth, although they may not recognize it. Story 24. Immediately resorting to personal insults when facing conflict instead of making arguments or expressing their opinions and feelings. Story 25. Constantly trying to outdo anyone venting or seeking sympathy. Many respond with, "That's unfortunate, but do you know what happened to me?" They treat conversations as competitive. Story 26. Public service announcement for people reading this thread. Do not be hard on yourself over this thread. This thread is a list of neurodivergent traits and mental health traits. There is a lot of overlap. Also, some very common mental health problems like anxiety and depression can cause severe emotional numbing or blunting. Emotional dysregulation is a significant trait of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Not being able to read common social cues or interpret people's emotions or expressions is common for individuals on the autism spectrum. Now, for the empathy part, life can wear you out, and negative or traumatic experiences can make people cautious and hesitant to show emotion or empathy. They may choose to remain stoic or distant, and that may have become their default. And that's okay. Don't be hard on yourself if you feel this way. In today's world, where we have immediate access to everything happening globally and in the lives of billions of people, it's easy to feel emotional exhaustion or empathy burnout. If you are not feeling the sympathy or empathy that others expect from you, it's okay. You cannot care about a billion people and a million issues all the time. You are human, and this is real life, not a movie. Do not equate someone else's or your own mental health challenges or emotional burnout with a lack of emotional intelligence. Just as you would not call someone who is physically exhausted lazy for needing rest, you should not label someone who is ill and fatigued as lazy for resting or sleeping. They need that rest and sleep to heal. Our bodies need rest, healing, and recuperation when we experience physical exhaustion or illness. Similarly, our minds need rest, healing, and recuperation when we are tired, exhausted, or unwell. And that's okay. This is how it works. In this world, many people are struggling. You may think, "Oh, but this is not normal or this is not common." But statistically, it is very common. It represents the world's normal. Life is incredibly challenging. The majority of people in the world have difficult childhoods, both at home and at school. As adults, making a living, dealing with life's problems, and navigating the world can be hard. You may think that normal people don't feel this way, but how many people in the world are actually normal? Statistically, the majority of people have some mental health issue that often lasts for years or even a lifetime. We may not realize it because we have only recently begun discussing and researching mental health. Just as physical illness is common, almost everyone gets sick occasionally. The same goes for mental health challenges. It can happen to almost everyone at some point, and for many, it can be long-lasting. Even if you don't personally struggle with these issues, you might think you just have low emotional intelligence. So what? It is what it is. It's okay. You wouldn't be hard on yourself for not being intelligent enough to be a neurosurgeon or an astronaut. Similarly, you shouldn't punish or insult yourself for having low emotional intelligence. You accept it. You can work on it and learn, but that takes time. In the meantime, we need to make peace with things as they are. The most important thing is that being hard on yourself or others over anything doesn't work. What works is kindness and grace. So, focus on what you need to improve. In the meantime, accept what is and make peace with it. Give yourself a break. Do what you need to do. That's okay. Apologize, make amends, take some time apart, and create boundaries. Make mental notes, socialize more gradually, pause and reflect, meditate, focus on how you feel, and practice relaxation. Learn how to be better and do better. That's all good. But don't punish yourself for not being perfect right now. No one is perfect. No human being is a finished product. We are always learning and improving. We are all works in progress. You, as much as any other being or person in the universe, deserve your love and kindness. Story 27. They stick very close to what is technically true in messy emotional and interpersonal affairs. They almost approach it like a lawyer. Story 28. He kept getting fired from his jobs but didn't realize the reason while he was explaining the reasons. Story 29. Refusal to accept the consequences of their actions, including never apologizing or being unable to have a reasonable conversation about others' feelings or perspectives. They hold grudges indefinitely and become unreasonably angry over the slightest inconvenience. Source: Living with my damaged mother. I feel like an expert. Story 30. They believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Among several friends, there is also the idea of being manly and traditional instead of seeking assistance. Story 31. Inability to accept criticism or suggestions, lack of confidence, and difficulty with emotional regulation. Story 32. Doesn't read the room and speaks inappropriately or at the wrong time. It is similar to how Sheldon comments on things in The Big Bang Theory and Young Sheldon. Story 33. A lot of people here are mistaking low emotional intelligence for emotional immaturity. Individuals with low emotional intelligence are often quiet, mild-mannered, and awkward. Emotionally immature people, which is what everyone is thinking of, are the loud individuals who annoy others. Low emotional intelligence and emotional immaturity are not the same, though they may seem synonymous. Story 34. Always listening to what people say and being quick to understand a person without really knowing them. Story 35. I am a strong advocate for the art of conversation, which I believe is nearly lost in our increasingly self-centered world. When I meet someone who talks excessively, never asks questions, relies on stereotypes, and makes broad generalizations, I recognize that they have low emotional intelligence. Story 36. Running others down to make yourself feel superior. These individuals blame everyone but themselves for their negative outcomes. Story 37. I probably have low emotional intelligence, so maybe I can shed some light on what it's like for me personally, and then you can draw whatever conclusions you'd like. I can understand how someone might feel in response to certain situations or stimuli, sometimes intuitively, but often based on naturally repeated exposure to people. However, I don't understand exactly how or why they got there because I feel like I process many of these things very differently. Even though I often try to mimic validating responses that people usually seek, I feel disingenuous doing so. Depending on my investment in the relationship with that person, I might put in more or less energy into making my response appear credible. I'm also deeply fascinated by how people think or perceive things. If I can get them to explain their worldview or their thought process, that is valuable to me, regardless of their level of intelligence. The issue is that I'm hyper-aware that my natural disposition, particularly when my inhibitions are lowered, is to ask many probing questions that some might find uncomfortable or intrusive. They may think I'm invalidating what they've told me or that I disagree with it, when in reality I just genuinely want to understand how their mind works. Often, asking questions or presenting hypotheticals that challenge a certain perspective they've shared forces them to illustrate their underlying thought process. Because the way I perceive things is so atypical, I try to keep my mouth shut. However, This means that I often miss genuine opportunities to deepen my relationship with that person while asking questions that genuinely intrigue me. I should also add that I used to have very poor emotional regulation, but after years of intentional practice, I'm comfortable saying that I'm happy with my current level of emotional regulation. There are obviously many disadvantages to having low emotional intelligence, but there are also some advantages. We likely have a natural disposition not to panic in situations that others might find extremely stressful, especially concerning the safety and well-being of others. This detachment allows us to behave more predictably and calmly compared to a panic response. Like everything else in life, you are born with certain attributes and not others. Some of these attributes can bring more positives than negatives, while others can bring more negatives than positives. However, make no mistake, even the attributes that stack the deck against you provide rare opportunities for growth that aren't available to others without that particular negative attribute. If you can capitalize on these opportunities, you can often end up much better off than those who didn't start with that particular negative attribute and fill a very specific need that isn't common. Story 38. Silent treatment and the inability to understand where someone else might be coming from, even if the other person is wrong. Story 39. When someone fixates on what others do wrong, even when they are mostly at fault, instead of reflecting and improving themselves, it can be problematic. Story 40. Being surprised by other people's negative reactions to things that most people would anticipate from a distance. I wonder how they did not realize that it would upset them. Story 41. Continuously interrupting someone or talking over them in a group conversation may indicate arrogance, ignorance, or low emotional intelligence. Story 42. My daughter has a low IQ, but she has the highest emotional intelligence, empathy, and common sense of anyone I have ever met. Although she has many friends, I don't think they recognize the gifts she possesses. She is happy. Story 43. Doing something to upset someone, then getting upset that they are upset and staying that way until they apologize for being upset instead of apologizing for upsetting them. Story 44. Usually, narcissists have low emotional intelligence as they lack accountability. They are known for statements such as, "I am sorry you feel that way. I am sorry you chose to get upset. It is not my fault you are sensitive." And, "You are very emotional." Story 45. Adult tantrums often stem from an inability to accept no. Individuals may blame others for their inability to regulate their emotions and have difficulty accepting directions or advice, which can lead to thoughts like, "Why does my life suck?" Or, "I keep facing bad times." One might wonder if such individuals didn't receive enough affection or were overwhelmed by it. Story 46. I feel like my dad is not very emotionally intelligent. Last year, when my parents were fighting a lot, he didn't consider my mom's feelings and seemed to believe his feelings mattered more. Since he disregarded how my mom felt, he often left the house for the night, leaving her crying. He was dealing with some mental health issues, but he has since gone to therapy and is now doing much better. Story 47. Inability to control one's emotions can be challenging. It is important not to let external factors affect us excessively. While we cannot control the entire world around us, we can control our reactions to it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.